You know, Bram Stoker's Dracula isn't told like your typical story. It's not a straightforward narrative. Instead, it all unfolds through this collection of journals, letters, and even newspaper clippings. In this explainer, we're going to dive into the very beginning of the novel, looking at the raw facts just as they're presented. We'll see how this unique style introduces us to a whole cast of characters who have absolutely no idea what kind of nightmare they're about to walk into. So let's kick things off with one of the most famous lines in all of literature. On the surface, it sounds so polite, right? But this invitation from Count Dracula himself really sets a tone that gets more and more sinister as the story goes on. And the person receiving that invitation, a young English solicitor named Jonathan Harker. Now, he's a modern guy, a professional, heading off to a land that feels like it's stuck in the past, all for what he thinks is just a routine business deal. Jonathan's mission is pretty simple. He's there to help his client, this mysterious Count Dracula, buy a big old estate in London called Carfax. And since he's a professional on a work trip, he keeps a detailed journal of everything that happens. And pretty soon, his entries start showing this massive clash between his orderly world and the ancient superstitious land he's found himself in. Almost immediately, Jonathan starts getting these, well, they're warnings, but he just kind of brushes them off. The local villagers are clearly terrified of Dracula's name. They make signs to ward off evil and practically beg him not to travel that night. One woman is so worried she actually presses her own crucifix into his hand. But in his journal, Jonathan just chalks it all up to local superstition. So he finally gets to the castle, and that initial feeling of unease, it slowly starts to morph into pure terror. That warm welcome wasn't what it seemed. And his host, well, he's anything but ordinary. And the Count himself, he's a walking contradiction. Jonathan's journal describes him as this polite, charming, and really well-readed guy with a library full of English books. But at the same time, Jonathan can't help but notice these incredibly unsettling details. His host's ice-cold skin, his razor-sharp teeth, his unbelievable strength. He's somehow both fascinating and totally horrifying. And very quickly, Jonathan's journal goes from, a travel diary to a full-blown horror log. One morning, the Count is standing behind him, but there's no reflection in his shaving mirror. He looks out the window and sees Dracula crawling down the sheer castle wall, face down like some kind of lizard. He realizes he's never once seen the Count eat or drink. Then comes the most terrifying discovery of all, finding his host lying in a box full of dirt, and then getting cornered by three ghostly women who clearly want his blood. And then the awful truth just clicks into place. He tries the doors. They're all locked. He explores every inch of the castle. There's no way out. His business is done, but he isn't being allowed to leave. This is it. The first major crisis of the story. Jonathan Harker is officially the Count's captive. Okay, so just as Jonathan's story is reaching this peak of absolute terror, the novel does something really interesting. It just jumps. We leave him trapped in that castle and rewind a bit to England, where life is just carrying on as normal with no one having any idea of the horror unfolding hundreds of miles away. And here, through their letters to each other, we meet the two main women in the story. There's Mina Murray, Jonathan's fiancée. She's smart, very practical, even practicing her shorthand skills so she can be more helpful to him when they're married. Her best friend, Lucy Wester, is almost her complete opposite. She's vibrant, beautiful, incredibly popular, and just seems to be living this perfect, charmed life. And when I say Lucy is popular, I mean really popular. How popular are we talking? She gets 3 marriage proposals in a single day. She says yes to one, a nobleman named Arthur Homewood. The other 2 came from Dr. John Seard, who happens to run a nearby asylum, and this adventurous American guy from Texas named Quincy Morris. And the amazing thing is, they all stay great friends with each other and totally devoted to Lucy. So while Mina is getting more and more anxious because she hasn't gotten any letters from Jonathan, a totally new and much more urgent problem starts to appear. Lucy, who has always been the picture of health, starts to get sick with this mysterious illness that nobody can figure out. The very first sign of trouble pops up while Mina is visiting Lucy in this coastal town called Whitby. An old childhood habit of Lucy's comes back: sleepwalking. It gets so bad that Mina has to start locking their bedroom door at night just to keep her friend from wandering off. And then comes this absolutely chilling entry in Mina's journal. She wakes up one night and Lucy is gone. She panics, rushes outside, and finds her in their favorite spot in an old churchyard. But she's not alone. There's this dark figure looming over her. By the time Mina gets there, the figure is gone, and a very shaken Lucy has 2 tiny little marks on her neck. After she gets back to her home in London, Lucy's condition just plummets. First, it's terrible nightmares that leave her completely drained. Her fiancé Arthur gets really worried about how pale and weak she is, and Dr. Seard, checking on his friend, confirms what Mina saw. Those 2 little puncture wounds are on her throat, and she's suffering from a shocking and unexplainable loss of blood. The doctors are completely baffled. Dr. Seard can't find any physical reason for her symptoms. He even calls in his old mentor, Professor Van Helsing, who's also deeply concerned, but isn't sharing his thoughts just yet. So, the big question is just hanging in the air. What is happening to Lucy Westenra? And now, this is the moment. The 2 separate storylines, Jonathan trapped in a castle and Lucy mysteriously dying, are about to be slammed together by one single horrifying event, all reported in the local Whitby newspaper. A Russian ship, the Deer, washes ashore in the middle of a crazy storm. There's no one left alive on board except for the captain, who's found dead, tied to the ship's wheel. And what's the cargo? 50 huge wooden crates filled with dirt. As the ship crashes into the harbor, witnesses see this massive dog-like animal leap off the deck and vanish into the night. And where does that mysterious cargo end up? It's delivered to the Carfax estate, the very same property that Jonathan Harker went all the way to Transylvania to secure for Count Dracula. And in a truly chilling twist, Carfax just happens to be located right next door to the asylum run by Dr. John Seard, one of the men trying desperately to save Lucy's life.